Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another Victober video. And today I'm going to be telling you how I'm getting on with my mission to read all the books by Anthony Trollope. So, if you don't know, Anthony Trollope is one of my absolute favourite authors. He was a wonderful Victorian author who wrote a lot of books, and a lot of books that I love. In fact, he wrote 47 novels over the course of his career, as well as various non-fiction books and short stories. And I have been trying to work my way through his 47 novels. I'm doing quite well. I have read 35 and a half of his books, which I think is pretty good going, but there are some books that I have left to read. A lot of you who have been watching this channel for a while know that I have been on a mission to read all of Anthony Trollope's books. So I thought today I would have a bit of a check-in, a bit of a status update, tell you what books by Anthony Trollope I've read and what books I have left to read and how my plan is going to read all of his books. So as I said, I have read 35 and a half novels by Anthony Trollope. So I'm going to tell you about the Anthony Trollope books that I have read in order of which I have read them. There are 3 books by him that I read when I was a teenager. The first 2 that I read were He Knew Who Was Right and The Way We Live Now. I don't remember which order I read them in though. And then after I had read those 2, I also read Rachel Ray. I haven't read Rachel Ray or He Knew Who Was Right since, so I don't remember them that well, but The Way We Live Now I have read many, many times since. It's one of my favourite books ever and I love it a lot. I didn't read any other Anthony Trollope as a teenager, but when I was, I think, 21, 22 years old, I read The Warden by Anthony Trollope, and then I just kept reading Anthony Trollope. So the rest of these books I have read over the last 10 years, and these are the books that I read and the order that I read them. So I read The Warden, which is the first book in the Chronicles of Barsetshire, then Barchester Towers, second book in the series, Dr. Thorne, third book in the series, Framley Parsonage, fourth book in the series, and then The Small House at Allington, the fifth book in the series. Then I read Christmas at Thompson Hall, which is a collection of Christmas short stories by Anthony Trollope, so not one of his novels, not counting that for my overall total. And then I read The Last Chronicle at Barset, which is obviously the 6th book in the Chronicles of Barsetshire. Then I started reading his other 6-book series, the Palliser series, also sometimes called the Parliamentary novels, and I think much more aptly called the Parliamentary novels because they are all about Parliament, but they're not that much about Mr. Palliser and his family. I read these books in relatively quick succession, but I kind of alternated them with standalones. So I read Can You Forgive Her, Palliser book 1, then Dr. Wortle's School, then Phineas Finn, second book in the Palliser series, then Cousin Henry, then The Eustace Diamonds, third book in the Palliser series, then Miss Mackenzie, then Phineas Redux, fourth book in the Palliser series, then He Popenjoy, and then the final 2 books in the Palliser series, The Prime Minister and the Duke's Children. And then I've just been working my way through his standalones ever since. I read The American Senator, The Belton Estate, The Claverings, Harry Heathcote of Gangoil, Lady Anna, The Kellys and the O'Kellys, An Old Man's Love, The Vicar of Bullhampton, Orley Farm, The 3 Clerks, Kept in the Dark, Sir Harry Hotspur of Humblethwaite, Nina Ballock-Carr, An Eye for an Eye, Ralph the Heir, and The Struggles of Brown, Jones and Robinson. And then I am currently reading Iola's Angel when I'm filming this. I may have finished it by the time this is up, I'm not sure, but I'm currently about a third to half of the way through Iola's Angel, which I'm really enjoying so far. So those are the 35 and a half novels plus a short story collection that I have read by Anthony Trollope so far. And I thought I would do a quick ranking of my top 10 of those books. I have done a ranking before of Anthony Trollope's books, but that was a few years ago, so there were a few books I hadn't read yet, and also I feel like some books have stayed in my mind better. I was going to do a top 10, and then I had 13 books, so I thought I would just do a top 10, but have some joint. So in joint 10th place, we have Orley Farm and the 3 Clerks. Orley Farm is an Anthony Trollope novel about an inheritance dispute, and it just is fantastic. And The 3 Clerks is about 3 clerks and their romantic relationships, and also one of their ambitions to become a writer. At number 9, I have put The Belton Estate, which is a kind of shorter, more intense love triangle novel that I really, really enjoyed. Then at number 8, I have put The Claverings, which is another love triangle novel. The Claverings was one of those Anthony Trollope books where after I read it, I was like, this is one of my favourite Anthony Trollope books ever, but I don't actually remember it that well, but I would still really recommend it. I did still really enjoy it a lot at the time. Then at number 7, I have An Eye for an Eye, a really different Anthony Trollope book that I read last year, which has at its core a kind of like love triangle situation with a man torn between two women from kind of different backgrounds, one who his family want him to marry, one who his family definitely don't want him to marry, but it also has quite a dramatic ending and a darker tone to it, and I'd really recommend it. And then at number 6 I have put Enjoy Place, The Prime Minister and the Duke's Children, the last two books in the Palliser series. In general, I don't love the Palliser series anywhere near as much as I love the Barsetshire Chronicles, but the final 2 books in the Palliser series are fantastic and really, really good, and they're like worth reading the whole Palliser series just for those 2 books. They're just 2 really fantastic novels, and they look at politics and grief and family and love and unrequited love, and they're just really, really worth your time. Then at number 5, I have put The Last Chronicle of Barset, which is the final book in the Barsetshire Chronicles. I love this novel a lot in and of itself, but also it's the final book in one of my favourite book series of all time, possibly my favourite book series of all time, and there's such a wonderful payoff and so many returning characters, and I just thought it was truly fantastic, so I really recommend this one a lot, but I very much recommend reading the whole Barsetshire Chronicles in order. Then at number 4 we have Ralph the Heir. So this is one of the fairly recent Anthony Trollope books I read it towards the end of last year, and I just absolutely loved it. It has all the kind of quintessential things I look for in an Anthony Trollope novel: inheritance disputes, love triangles / quartets, and a lot of fantastic characters. Then number 3 I have put The Vicar of Bullhampton, which is a wonderful Anthony Trollope novel that I really recommend, and I think it's probably a good place to start with Anthony Trollope too. It's got kind of 3 different plot lines going on in it. One plot line is about a crime that has been committed, one plot line is a love triangle, and one plot line is about the dispute between 2 different denominations of Christianity in Bullhampton, and it's just a really wonderful book. I feel like it's both a really good place to start with Trollope because it is so good, but I also feel like it's a very quintessentially Anthony Trollope novel that covers like a lot of the Anthony Trollope goodness, and if you like it, then you will probably like most Anthony Trollope books. Then in second place I have put Dr. Wortle School, a wonderful novel, quite a short Anthony Trollope novel about a school teacher who has a moral dilemma to do with one of his staff, and I just think it's a really fantastic, wonderful book, and one I really recommend. Another decent place to start with Anthony Trollope. Then in joint first place I have my 2 favourite Anthony Trollope novels, 2 of my favourite books of all time: The Small House at Allington, which is the 5th book in the Chronicles of Barsetshire, and The Way We Live Now, which is a standalone. The Small House at Allington is a fantastic novel about 2 very different sisters and their different paths and romantic relationships, and The Way We Live Now is a novel all about money and various people kind of gathering around a massive fortune, and it's just fantastic. So that's how my Anthony Trollope journey is going so far, but I do of course have some more Anthony Trollope books left to read. So I have 11 novels by him left to read once I have finished Ayala's Angel. So the 2 I'm hoping to read in Victober are Linda Tressel and Mr. Scarborough's Family, which I'm really hoping I will have finished by the end of this month, but we'll see how we go. And then after that, the novels I have left to read are Le Vendée, which is a historical novel set during the French Revolution, or more specifically during the counter-revolution that took place in Le Vendée. Then The Bertrams, The Golden Lion of Grandpère, John Caldergate, The Fixed Period. I'm pretty sure The Fixed Period is like a utopian / dystopian novel set in the future, so I'm very curious about that one. And then also left are Marion Fay, The McDermotts of Ballycloran, Castle Richmond, and The Landleaguers. So those are the Anthony Trollope novels, the 11 Anthony Trollope novels that I have left to read. But as well as those 11 novels, I also want to read this short story collection I have, which is The Two Heroines of Plumpington and Other Stories. I think I have read 1 or 2 of the stories in here before. So I've read The Two Heroines of Plumpington and Christmas at Thompson Hall in another collection, but I haven't read the other short stories in here, which I would like to read. And then I also want to read Anthony Trollope's autobiography that he wrote, which came out I think the year after his death, which is just called An Autobiography. I don't want to read that until I've read all of his novels, but I would really like to read that, and I think it will be really interesting. And then I also would really like to reread Rachel Ray and He Knew He Was Right, because it's been such a long time since I read them, a good kind of like 15, 16 years, and I don't remember them very well, especially Rachel Ray. I remember very little about at all. He Knew He Was Right I remember a bit better because I also saw an adaptation of it at the time, but I'm not really certain what is my memory of the book and what is my memory of the adaptation. Also, I feel like He Knew He Was Right is a truly fantastic Anthony Trollope novel, and I feel like when I reread it, it will be in my top 10, if not in my top 5, but it's just been such a long time since I read it that I don't really like place it there now, but I feel like I will, so I just really want to reread that one before I consider myself like fully done with Anthony Trollope. Not that I'll be done, I'm going to reread all of them. No, I'm not going to reread all of them at some point. I don't need to put myself through Phineas Redux again. That was my least favourite Anthony Trollope book. Why, Anthony Trollope, did you make those plot decisions? I was not happy. I'm sure I will reread many other Anthony Trollope books again, but before I consider my like Trollope project finished, I want to reread Rachel Ray and He Knew Who Was Right. Basically, in 2025, I want to do what I did in I think 2018 or 2019, I can't remember what year it was now, where I read an Anthony Trollope book every single month. So I want to do that in 2025. I was thinking if I managed to get read the 2 Anthony Trollope books I want to get read in Victober and then read 1 more in either November or December, that would leave me 12 books to read over the course of 2025, including the 2 rereads, the short story collection and his autobiography. And if I read all of them 1 a month over the course of 2025, then by the end of 2025 I would have read all of Anthony Trollope's novels plus a couple of rereads and extra bits I want to read, which would be very, very satisfying. Will I be able to manage it? I don't know, but I feel like I need to make it a really big priority, because I feel like every year for the last few years I've been like, I want to read lots of Anthony Trollope books, and then I just don't end up reading as many of them as I want to because I've got other reading goals. But I feel like if I make it my like main reading goal for 2025 and I read 1 book a month, I feel like that is doable, and I feel like that would be really nice to do. Obviously for the last 2 years I've been doing the Mega Dickens read along and reading a very long Dickens book every month, albeit on audiobook, but I feel like with the Mega Dickens read along finished, it is much more feasible for me to be able to read an Anthony Trollope book every month. Admittedly, I do think I've more or less run out of Anthony Trollope books I can listen to on audiobook now. Well, I could reread He Knew Who Was Right and maybe Rachel Ray, I'm not sure, on audiobook, and I think his autobiography is on audiobook, but I feel like most of the rest of them, there aren't audiobooks. But regardless, I do feel like I could get through all of Anthony Trollope in 2025. I do think I have left some very long books to the end, but there are still a few shorter ones in there. I think The Golden Lion of Grandpère and The Fixed Period are both relatively short to my knowledge, but I also feel like La Vendée is huge, if memory serves, and maybe some of the others too. But, you know, I'm excited. I love Anthony Trollope a lot, and although some of his books are very long, I never find them difficult. Like, they're always just such a joy to read, with the exception of Phineas Redux. It's not even that bad, it's just, in comparison to the rest of Anthony Trollope, I was disappointed. The Kellys and the O'Kellys as well was not so good. They're the only 2 Anthony Trollope books I've read where I did think like, oh, I didn't really like that, but in general, Anthony Trollope is just wonderful. He does sometimes repeat his plots and his setups, but you know, if you write 47 novels, you're going to. And to be honest, I love a love triangle and I love an inheritance dispute and a complicated will so much that I really don't mind if he repeats them all the time. That is fine by me. So yes, I'm excited for the Anthony Trollope books I have left. Do let me know down in the comments. I know a few of you who watch my channel have read all of Anthony Trollope already, so if you have, let me know, are there any particular highlights that I have to look forward to? And in general, let me know what your favourite Anthony Trollope book is. And if you haven't read Anthony Trollope yet, then you really should. You don't really need me to tell you that I love Anthony Trollope, because the fact that I want to read all 47 of his novels is really just a big advertisement for how much I love Anthony Trollope. I'm excited to read a lot more Anthony Trollope in 2025. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another Victober video.